Anna Petrova, 48 years old, an engineer-restorer by profession, was inspecting the old brick foundation of the Vidensky Monastery that foggy morning, October 5, 2024. Restoration work was in full swing, and she was checking the structural integrity of the walls under the main altar. The project was massive. The old monastery required major repairs. It was then that her hands slid over a small recess in the wall, hidden behind a layer of centuries-old plaster. At first, she thought it was just a defect in the masonry, but when Anna looked more closely, she realized that the irregularity was too regular. It was a small metal handle, almost invisible. Anna carefully pulled it outward. An old, dust-covered door emerged, leading into pitch darkness. What she found had been there for 20 years. The door was made of oak, heavy and covered in cobwebs, but surprisingly undamaged. And most disturbingly, inside was not just an empty space. A strange, musty odor emanated from it, mixed with something subtly metallic. This discovery would forever change the 20-year-old mystery that had plagued the quiet suburban town of Priozersk. Anna had no idea that this ordinary morning would become the most unsettling day of her life. What was meant to be discovered had remained hidden for 20 years, waiting for this moment. In a few minutes, the two-decade secret would finally be revealed. Priozersk would never be the same after this discovery. It was a cold and rainy November of 2004. The air in Priozersk, a small town located on the shore of Lake Ladoga, was saturated with the smell of dampness and fallen leaves. The Vidensky Monastery, with its ancient walls and high domes, towered over the town like a silent guardian. It was not just a religious center. The monastery also served as a boarding school for boys from remote regions. For teenagers, students 15 and 16 years old lived there studying theology and general sciences. Mikhail Volkov, a 15-year-old boy with a shock of unruly chestnut hair, dreamed of becoming a historian. He often disappeared into the old monastery library, absorbed in dusty tomes. Next to him was Sergei Morozov, his peer, quiet and thoughtful, with an extraordinary talent for drawing. His albums were full of sketches of monastery walls and the faces of monks. Andrei Nikolaev, 16 years old, was the oldest and most mischievous. He loved to play pranks on the younger ones but was always ready to help. Ivan Petrov, also 16 years old, was his complete opposite. He was serious and very devout. He spent hours in the monastery church praying. Their lives were simple and measured. Lessons, prayers, modest meals, evening readings. They shared a common cell, laughing and discussing their dreams at night. Mikhail's dreams of excavating ancient ruins, Sergei's dreams of having his paintings hung in large galleries. They were young and they were full of hope. On November 14, 2004, those hopes were shattered. The night before, the boys had been seen in the monastery refectory having dinner. After that, they went to their cell. The next morning, their cell was empty. Their beds were neatly made, and their personal belongings, including textbooks and clothing, remained in place. Only their sleeping bags were missing. Their mentor, Father Anatoly, a tall and stern monk with a gray beard, was the first to discover their disappearance. He was waiting for them for morning prayer. They did not appear. At first, he thought they had simply overslept or decided to play a prank. However, their absence at breakfast caused concern. He went to their cell. The door was ajar, and the cell was empty. Searches began immediately. The monks searched every corner of the monastery. They checked the library, they checked the church, and they checked the utility rooms.
No trace.
Father Anatoly reported to the abbot, Archimandrite Ignat. Archimandrite Ignat, a man with a heavy gaze and an iron will, immediately contacted the local authorities. The police arrived at the monastery several hours later. They searched the area around the monastery, the forests, the lake, and the adjacent fields. Service dogs were used. Nothing.
No traces, no clues.
The police interrogated all the monks and staff. They interrogated everyone who might know something. No one saw anything, no one heard anything. No one could explain how 4 teenagers could disappear without a trace from a seemingly safe and closed monastery. The mystery remained unsolved. for boys full of life simply vanished. Their families were devastated. Mothers cried, fathers searched for answers, but there were none. Only silence, only a growing sense of fear. This case left a deep wound in the heart of Priozersk. It left a question: what happened to the boys and why? Years passed, a decade passed. The mystery of the disappearance of the 4 boys from the Vidensky Monastery slowly moved from newspaper headlines to grim urban legends. At first, there were large-scale searches, police investigations, and public appeals. All of this gradually faded. Hope was replaced by despair. The boys' parents, exhausted by grief, continued to search for answers, but there were none. Father Anatoly, the boys' mentor, left the monastery several years after the disappearance. He was deeply shaken by what had happened. He could not find peace. He spent the rest of his life in a small village, serving in a rural church. He rarely spoke about the monastery. When he did, his eyes were full of deep sadness. Some said that he carried an unbearable burden on himself. Archimandrite Ignat, the abbot of the monastery, remained in his post. He seemed unshakable. He always answered questions from journalists and police officers with unwavering firmness. He said that the boys must have run away. He claimed that they were disobedient and probably ran away to start a new life. No one could believe it. The boys were attached to their families. They had plans for the future. The truth, however, was much more complex and much more frightening. That night, November 14th, the boys did not run away. They were taken not by force but by deception. Archimandrite Ignat, the man whom everyone considered virtuous and holy, was involved in a secret conspiracy. He was part of a small but influential group of people. This group believed that the world was on the verge of an apocalypse. They believed that they needed to gather a group of chosen young people. These young people needed to be trained and prepared for a new era. Ignat, using his influence and authority, convinced the boys to join them. He promised them a great future. He spoke of saving the world. He spoke of a special mission. The boys, naive and full of faith, believed him. They thought they were going on a secret pilgrimage. They thought they were chosen. They were transferred to a hidden cell located deep under the altar of the monastery. This cell was part of ancient underground passages. These passages were known only to a few high-ranking monks. Ignat planned to keep them there in secret. He planned to teach them his doctrines. He planned to turn them into his followers. He wanted to use them in his mad plan. Life in the secret cell was harsh. The boys were isolated from the outside world. They were given meager food, old books, and instructions. Ignat rarely visited them. When he came, he read them his sermons. He spoke about the end of the world. He spoke about salvation. He spoke about the need for purity. The boys quickly realized that they had been deceived. They realized that they were not chosen. They were prisoners. Mikhail, the smartest of them, began writing down his thoughts on the walls of the cell. He used charcoal found in old candles. He wrote about his fears. He wrote about his dreams. He wrote about his escape plans. Sergei continued to draw. He drew the walls of the cell. He drew each other. He drew his despair. He drew his hopes. Andrei, always energetic, tried to find a way out. He looked for cracks in the walls. He looked for secret passages. Ivan, the most devout, prayed. He prayed for salvation. He prayed for forgiveness. He prayed for freedom. The outside world continued to search for them, but Ignat was too clever. He destroyed all traces. He falsified records. He intimidated those who might know something. He maintained his image as a holy man. He was respected in society. No one could suspect him. No one could suspect the monastery. The secret cell was not only a place of imprisonment. It was a place of trials. Ignat subjected the boys to various deprivations. He tested their faith. He tested their endurance. He wanted to break them. He wanted them to accept his teachings. He wanted them to become his slaves. He was determined. He was ruthless. Time passed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. The boys' hope faded. Their physical condition deteriorated, but their spirit remained unbending. They supported each other. They shared their meager supplies. They told stories from their past lives. They remembered their families. Ignat believed that his secret would be buried with him. He was confident in his safety. He was confident in his power. He could not imagine that his carefully planned conspiracy would be exposed. He could not imagine that his crimes would be revealed. He could not imagine that the truth would come out. The death of Archimandrite Ignat in 2023 marked the beginning of the end for his carefully guarded secret. He was 85 years old. He died of old age. He never confessed to his crimes. His death seemed to finally close the case of the disappearance of the 4 boys, but it was not so. Anna Petrova, the engineer restorer, was the person who inadvertently opened that door. She was not connected to the monastery. She did not know about the old secret. She was simply a professional doing her job. Her task was to restore old buildings. She had been assigned to repair the Vidensky Monastery. When Anna discovered the hidden door behind the altar, her heart beat faster. It was unusual. No monastery plans indicated the existence of this room. Her professional curiosity took over. She decided to inspect it. She lit her flashlight and she went inside. The air was heavy and dusty. It was saturated with the smell of antiquity and something else, something unpleasant. Inside the cell, there was twilight. The light from Anna's flashlight snatched the outlines of objects from the darkness. She saw several old, rusty cauldrons. She saw dirty blankets. She saw several books. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. Then she saw the walls. They were covered with inscriptions and drawings. Anna came closer. She began to read. The inscriptions were made with charcoal. They were written in Russian. She saw the names: Mikhail, Sergei, Andrei, Ivan. Anna's heart stopped. She remembered. She had heard about that old story. The disappearance of 4 boys from the monastery 20 years ago. Could this be connected? She ran her hand along the wall. She felt the roughness. She saw dates spanning several years after the boys' disappearance. This could not be a coincidence. It was proof, irrefutable proof. The boys had not run away. They were here in this very cell. Anna felt a chill. She felt fear but also determination. She had to report it. She had to reveal this secret. She had to help the boys' families. They deserved to know the truth. She took several photos with her phone. She recorded her observations. Then she carefully left the cell and she closed the door. She called the police. She told them everything she had seen. She showed them the photos. The police were initially skeptical of her words, but her persistence convinced them. They sent an investigative team to the monastery. When the police, led by Captain Dmitry Smirnov, entered the secret cell behind the altar, the air filled with tension. Anna Petrova waited outside. Her heart was pounding. The 2 young police officers who entered first came out after a few seconds with pale faces. Captain Smirnov, an experienced investigator, entered next. He stayed inside for several minutes. When he came out, his face was serious. Inside the cell, the boys' personal belongings were found. Several textbooks belonging to Mikhail with his name written on the cover, Sergei's drawing album, full of sketches, Andrei's toy soldier covered in rust, and Ivan's small wooden cross. All these items, covered in a layer of dust and mold, were irrefutable proof that the boys had been here. But the most shocking thing was the walls of the cell. They were completely covered with inscriptions and drawings. These were not just scribbles. These were diaries, diaries of despair, diaries of hope, diaries of a life spent in captivity. Mikhail Volkov, the most educated of them, left detailed records of his days. He wrote about hunger. He wrote about cold. He wrote about fear. He wrote about his attempts to understand why they were being held captive. He described the visits of Archimandrite Ignat. Ignat came rarely. He brought them food. He read them excerpts from old, strange texts. He spoke about the end of the world. He spoke about a new beginning. Mikhail's records revealed the horrifying truth. Ignat was not just holding them captive. He was subjecting them to a kind of spiritual cleansing. He forced them to starve. He forced them to pray for hours. He instilled in them the idea that the outside world was corrupt. He told them that only the chosen ones would survive. Sergei Morozov captured his feelings in drawings. His drawings were striking. Some of them depicted dark, confined spaces. Others were portraits of his friends. Their faces were emaciated, but there was still a spark of hope in their eyes. There were also drawings of symbols that Ignat had drawn on the floor of the cell. These symbols, as experts later discovered, were part of an ancient occult teaching. Andrei Nikolaev left short but furious inscriptions. He wrote about his attempts to get out. He described a weak spot in the walls. He wrote about his escape plans. He wrote about how he missed his family. He wrote about his desire for revenge. His inscriptions were full of anger. Ivan Petrov, the most devout, wrote only prayers. Prayers for salvation, prayers for forgiveness, prayers for those who held them captive. His handwriting was neat and even. He used every free moment to pray. He was the last to leave a record. His last entry was, "I feel weak, but I believe God will not leave us." The police conducted further searches in the monastery. They found old documents in the personal belongings of the deceased Ignat. Among them were letters from his accomplices. They discussed their project, they discussed the chosen ones, and they discussed the secret place. All these letters were written long before the disappearance of the boys. This confirmed that the plan had been developed in advance. News of the find in the monastery quickly spread throughout Priozersk. The town was in shock. People could not believe that such a thing could happen in their peaceful community. Local residents who remembered the disappearance of the boys were horrified. Some cried, some were outraged, and some simply sat in silence, trying to grasp this terrible truth. The boys' families were immediately notified. The parents of Mikhail, Sergei, Andrei, and Ivan were summoned to the monastery. When they were shown the cell, when they saw their son's personal belongings, and when they read the inscriptions on the walls, their grief was unbearable. After 20 years, they finally had answers, but those answers were much more terrible than they could have imagined. Mikhail's mother, Elena Volkova, fell to her knees. She cried. She whispered her son's name. Sergei's father, Alexei Morozov, tightly clutched his son's drawing album. His eyes were red from tears. Andrei's and Ivan's parents hugged each other. They could not speak. They were devastated. The realization that their children had not run away, that they had been held captive, so close to them in a sacred place that was supposed to be safe, was unbearable. It was betrayal. It was a cruel crime. It was a shocking truth. The discovery of the secret cell and the boys' diaries caused a real storm in Priozersk and beyond. The news quickly spread to national channels. The monastery, which had once been a symbol of peace and spirituality, now became a place of terrifying mystery. The police launched a full-scale investigation. Although Archimandrite Ignat was dead, his accomplices could still be alive. First, investigators began looking for those who were associated with Ignat. The names of several people were found in his personal papers. These were high-ranking members of a certain secret society. They were from different cities, different professions, but they all shared Ignat's belief in the approaching apocalypse and the need for the chosen ones. The police began making arrests. Some of them were influential people. One was a former university professor, another was a doctor. They were all shocked when they were arrested. They thought that their secret was safely hidden. Unfortunately, none of the boys could be found alive. Mikhail's records on the walls of the cell ended approximately 4 years after their disappearance. The last records became increasingly illegible. They spoke of illness. They spoke of weakness. They spoke of their condition getting worse. An examination established that the boys probably died from malnutrition and the absence of proper medical care. The monastery was not adapted for long-term detention of people in such conditions. They were left to their fate. The boys' bodies were never found. Perhaps their remains were moved by Ignat or his accomplices. Perhaps they were buried somewhere deep under the monastery. The police continued their search, but to no avail. This added another tragic note to the story. The families could not say goodbye to their sons properly. The public demanded answers. A special commission of investigation was created. It was to examine how this could have happened and why no one had noticed anything suspicious for 2 decades. It turned out that Ignat had enormous influence in local circles. He was very convincing. He knew how to manipulate people. He used his connections to stifle any rumors. The Vidensky Monastery, which had once been a place of pilgrimage, was now closed to visitors. Its reputation was ruined. An internal audit by church authorities began. They promised to conduct their own investigation. They promised to take measures to ensure that something like this never happened again. For Priozersk, it was a time of deep soul-searching. Many residents felt guilty. They asked themselves why they hadn't noticed anything, why they had believed Ignat, and why they hadn't asked questions. The city council declared a day of remembrance. A day of remembrance for the 4 boys whose lives had been tragically cut short. The boys' families, although devastated, found some comfort in the fact that the truth had finally been revealed. They filed lawsuits against the monastery and Ignat's accomplices. They wanted justice. They wanted the guilty to be punished. They wanted their son's memory to be cleared. Society was furious. People felt deceived. They felt betrayed. This story became a warning that evil can lurk even in the most unexpected places, that faith can be used to justify the most heinous crimes, and that power can corrupt. The investigation continued for many months. Some of Ignat's accomplices were sentenced to long prison terms. Others, already elderly, died during the investigation or while awaiting sentencing, but justice, although delayed, was restored. The truth came out and the world knew. After all the shocks and revelations, life in Priozersk gradually began to return to normal, but it would never be the same. The shadow of the tragedy of the 4 boys would forever remain over the town. The parents of Mikhail, Sergei, Andrei, and Ivan, although reconciled to their loss, continued to fight for the memory of their sons. They created a foundation in their honor, a foundation that helped victims of similar crimes. The Vidensky Monastery, having gone through a deep crisis, tried to revive itself. A new abbot was appointed. He vowed that the monastery would be open and transparent. He vowed that such horrors would never happen again within its walls. Part of the monastery was converted into a museum dedicated to the history of the monastery and, most importantly, to the memory of the 4 boys. Copies of their diaries were displayed there, and copies of their drawings were displayed there. The story of the 4 boys from Priozersk became a reminder of the fragility of trust, of how easily innocent people can be manipulated, and of how even the most sacred places can hide dark secrets. This story also became a testament to the power of truth, a power that can break through decades of silence, a power that can reveal the deepest secrets. Mikhail, Sergei, Andrei, and Ivan. Their names are now remembered not as the names of missing boys. They are remembered as the names of victims of a terrible injustice. They are remembered as the names of those who, despite all the hardships, remained strong. Their story will live on. It will serve as a warning, and it will serve as a reminder that the truth always finds its way.